Welcome to the Podcast Marketing Magic Training session. We will go ahead and get started in just 2 minutes. All right, this is Seth Green. I am your host today of our Podcast Marketing Magic webinar. We are going to go ahead and dive right in and get started. So you are about to discover how to get impossible to reach decision makers to seek you out, how to write a book without writing a book, and how 20 minutes a week can get 20 people referring you business. This is the exact process I used. This is the exact process we figured out and that we use for our clients. It is getting great results. If you follow the same steps, you will get the same results. Why podcasting? I'm going to back up for a second. I don't want to assume that everybody knows what a podcast is. And if you've got your action guide that you downloaded and printed out, you can follow along with me. A podcast is like a radio show on your phone. So why would you want a radio show on your phone? Well, I've got, for example, a number of clients who are financial advisors. And I've got one who built his entire business on a radio show. And they are $1 million producers, top 1% of the industry. However, their radio show, they spend $60,000 a year on their radio show. And it generates their production now. But it didn't when they started. It took years of spending all that money before they started seeing significant results. The beauty of a podcast is you don't need to spend all of that, because the problem with the radio show is you got to pay for the airtime. Then you got to get the audience to listen to the show and run commercials on other shows and during other time slots to get people to listen. You got to advertise it and you got to promote it. And all in the hopes of spending a lot of money to reach your target market. A podcast is so much more targeted. It costs next to nothing, especially compared to a real radio show, a terrestrial radio show, which are going away, by the way, and I'm going to share with you why in a minute. But they are so targeted. You don't have to spend all of that money advertising them, and you can put them in front of you don't have to pay for listeners. You only pay for you only get the people who care. So let's go. Why am I here to talk to you about podcasting? I wrote the book Podcasting Marketing Magic, among other books, that just got picked up by a major publisher. So very excited to have a book in Barnes & Noble soon. And I also have my own top-rated podcast, Direct Response Marketing, which has been number 3 on iTunes. Why you should be learning about podcasting now? Well, right now there are a billion people listening to podcasts. And if you fill this out on your action guide, that number is going to triple. It's going to go to 3 billion by the year 2020. And the reason is what you're seeing on your screen right now. This is Apple CarPlay. So what Apple did, and this is really smart, is they spent billions of dollars to get a deal with almost every major car manufacturer. So the next new car you buy, the next generation of new cars, your dashboard interface is going to look like this. And that purple icon in the center is the Apple Podcast interface. And that will be what's called a native app to your car. And if you don't know what a native app is, it's an app you cannot delete, even if you want to. So even if you don't have an iPhone, iPad, iPod, or iMac, you're going to have an iCar, whether you like it or not. And the 2 most used apps on any smartphone, other than social media, are the podcast app and the Amazon app. So if you don't have a podcast and you don't have a book, how are all those people going to find you? So that's why the time is now. That's why this is the new ground floor of podcasting. The original ground floor was when it first came out, with Apple putting all this money behind it and really making this a huge deal, this is now, 3 billion people is a huge audience. And your prospects and potential clients are in there somewhere, and we're going to show you how to help find them and how to help them find you. Who am I? Why should you listen to me? In case you don't know, I've written 6 books. Let's see, I believe 4 of which are bestsellers. I have been interviewed on real media like CBS Money Watch, CNN, NBC, Boston Globe, Miami Herald, Inc. magazine. And I'm the only person in history that Dan Kennedy has nominated for his prestigious Marketer of the Year award 3 years in a row, back to back to back, which is really, really flattering because no one else has ever done it that many times. I don't think anybody's been nominated more than 1 year in a row. So that's, you give him enough money and he starts to smile. But it didn't start out that way. I did not start out as a marketing guru. I went to Syracuse University. Go Qs, Final Four. I started out as my undergraduate degree was in acting. My life goal at 18 years of age was I wanted to be a Broadway star. You see how that worked out. The reason why is because my senior year, 2 of my friends and I decided to produce an interactive murder mystery musical called The Mystery of Edwin Drood by Charles Dickens that none of you have ever heard of, for a very good reason. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was when the Student Government Association cut our budget in half. I got this brilliant idea. If you've ever seen Top Gun with Tom Cruise, you remember the admiral who says, "Son, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash." And instead of what I should have done, I should have closed the show and said, "Sorry, we can't produce the show on half the budget. Show's over. Everybody, all your jobs are canceled. Tell your parents to cancel their plane tickets." But I didn't. I decided that I would charge the show on my credit cards and that we would make our money back selling tickets, except I knew nothing about marketing back then. So, second mistake. And we did not sell very many tickets because we knew nothing about marketing, and we had a show no one had ever heard of for very good reason. So I ended up having to go bankrupt. I went Chapter 7 because my 2 friends stiffed me. Their parents refused to let them get credit cards for their share and do balance transfers for their share of the debt. They left me holding all of it, and I had no way to pay it back. So probably the worst day of my life, sitting in bankruptcy court, and the trustee looks down his bifocals at me and says, "I'm sorry, son, I don't understand this. Your application says this is for a musical. Explain this one to me." That was not fun. So I decided that because maybe I shouldn't be a producer, maybe I shouldn't be an actor, because I had just borrowed a whole bunch of money I didn't have to gamble on something I knew nothing about. So maybe instead I should go become a financial advisor. That's a logical career choice, right, Richard? You remember when you became a financial advisor? I'm sure it's for the exact same reason. So I went to work for A.G. Edwards, Fortune 500 company. It has been bought out twice and since doesn't exist anymore. And I started, and when I got back from training, the branch manager says, "I got you a book where all your clients are going to come from your entire career." I said, "Oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to go buy a Ferrari with all this money. This is going to be great." All right, they don't have a Ferrari dealership in Buffalo, but I was going to have it shipped to me. And he went behind his desk and he literally handed me the phone book and said, "They're all in there, Tiger, go get them." And I didn't know any better. So I made 300 cold calls a day, interrupting strangers, asking them for money. And it sucked. If you've ever done it, it's not a fun way to make a living. So time goes by, and I'm wishing there's another way. There's got to be a better way, right? Al Gore's claiming, hasn't even started claiming he invented the internet yet. Maybe there's a better way to generate leads than interrupting people on the phone. And luckily, in my spare time, I am a professional magician. Excuse me. And I was reading a magic magazine, a trade journal for magicians, and in it was a full-page ad for a marketing course. I didn't have any money, so I asked my parents to buy it for me for my birthday, which they did. And I implemented the course. That's the key. I implemented what I learned. And in 30 days, I was the busiest, most expensive magician in Buffalo, where I live. So I used my marketing critique to call the guy who sold me the course, whose name is Dave D., who's now chief marketing officer of the company that Dan Kennedy started. And I said, "Dave, where did you learn this? Would this work in my real job as a financial advisor?" And he said, "Yes, it would." I said, "Where'd you learn it?" And he said the 2 words that changed my life. He said, "Dan Kennedy." So I started buying Dan Kennedy books. I started buying Dan Kennedy tapes, Dan Kennedy products. Along the way, I met my wife, got married, and I finally did a consultation with Dan. And Dan said, you're doing everything your industry teaches, which is completely wrong. Write me this really big check and I'll change your life. And that was, his pitch was obviously a whole lot better than that, but I'm shortening it so we can get to the good stuff. So I go home and I say, honey, I know a year ago we got married, and 9 months ago we bought our first house, and 3 months ago we had our first baby, and 3 weeks ago you quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm sole breadwinner. I'm making cold calls. I need to go borrow a ton of money to go hire this guy, Dan. And she said, didn't you tell me a story about you borrowing money once? It didn't work out so well. Let's not do this. So the next day I asked the same question. She gave me the same answer. After 30 days of asking the same question on day, because I am persistent, on day 31, she said, you better pray this works. So I went to work with Dan, and boy, did it work. Because in my first 2 years of working with Dan, he quadrupled my production. And I went from the 6,699th ranked advisor at AG Edwards to the top 30 in the country nationwide for opening new accounts. It got me written about in 3 best-selling books for financial advisors. It got me profiled in the top trade journal on the industry, Registered Rep magazine, and all of it is the antidote to cold calling. And all of a sudden, my phone is ringing with advisors going, I want to do what you did. So I said, Dan, what do I do? And he said, you start a marketing company and you do it for them. So I did, and that was Market Domination LLC, which we started 8 years ago. Started out as just me and one financial advisor as my client, and now I've got an office building full of a wonderful staff, and we serve hundreds of clients literally all over the planet, actually, all over the globe. So let's talk about what you're here to learn. That's how I've earned the right to talk to you today. Along the way, I wrote 6 books: Financial Advisor Marketing Magic, Real Estate Marketing Magic, Cutting Edge Marketing Magic, Online Marketing Magic, and the Facebook Ninja, and Podcast Marketing Magic, which is what you're here to talk about today, how podcasting can be your freedom. So let's talk about it's your freedom from so many challenges, right? Because you no longer have to worry about where your next prospect's coming from. You no longer have to worry about where your next referral's coming from. You no longer have to worry about where your next piece of business is coming from, because podcasting can solve all of that if you do it the right way, which I'm going to dive right in and start showing you. So again, make sure you fill this in your action guide. If you take away one thing from my presentation right now, iTunes is not a social network. iTunes is a media platform. iTunes is a media platform. And once you have an account on iTunes media platform, what does that make you? It makes you a reporter. And what do reporters do? What do they do, Mark? They interview people, right? So now you're a reporter and you interview people. And if you're a reporter interviewing someone, you have a very remarkable ability. You can give them what Mary Kay of Mary Kay Cosmetics says they want more than money and sex. It's recognition and fame, because you can grant them exposure. So who can your podcast get you in front of? Literally anyone. The sky is the limit. This is Gary Okino, who's a golf coach, who's a client of ours. And his podcast, The Outdoor Boardroom, he interviews large company and Fortune 500 CEOs who golf. They talk about business, golf, and life lessons they learned on the golf course, The Outdoor Boardroom. And it opens the relationship for Gary to say, hey, I noticed on the podcast you said your biggest challenge in your golf game was your slice, and your bucket list golf course is St. Andrews, and you'd love to BJ Singh is your hero. Would you be open to me sending you some information about how I could get you to St. Andrews with BJ Singh and fix your slice? What do you think the CEO says? The CEO says, yes. And Gary sends him a shock and awe box marketing campaign about his last golf lesson ever golf program that is 6 figures a year, because he will pick BJ Singh up on a private jet, pay his $25,000 appearance fee, pick up the CEO, fly them to St. Andrews, play for 2 days, and fly them back. All because he got them on his podcast. And the beauty of it is podcasts are still so new that no one has ever asked. We've never had a CEO or a PR department say, how many people listen to the show? Because Gary was getting CEOs on his show when he had the first episode had 10 listeners. 9 of them worked for me. One of them was Gary. One of them was Gary's wife. The other 9 work in my office. So if they had said, how many people listen to your show? And Gary had said 10, they probably wouldn't have done it. but nobody asks, which is beautiful. In the future, will that change? Yeah, of course it will. So that's why you need to build up a following so that when people ask, you can have a good answer. But nobody's going to ask you when you start. This is John Cito, who's a certified divorce financial analyst. And he had been trying to get referrals from New Jersey divorce lawyers for, I think, like for years and years and years, at least 5, with no luck. I mean, he sent direct mail, he made phone calls, he even sent flowers and got nowhere. But we did John is doing a podcast and a book, and I'll show you how the podcast turns into a book on New Jersey divorce experts, right? And he's interviewing the divorce lawyers and the marriage counselors and all the people who serve divorcing couples. And now he's got 17 of them who are talking to him, have relationships with him, sending business his way. All because he led with value first. He put them on his show. He put them in his book. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Why do I do this? That is my wife, Rebecca, and those are our 3 kids, Ella, Lily, and Max. And these are some of the third world entrepreneurs I've been able to help because of people like you. We donate a percentage of our profits to kiva.org, where we make microloans to help third world entrepreneurs start or grow their businesses and get out of poverty. We've actually been able to help 750 of them. I can't fit them all on one slide. I just wanted to show you a few of them. And I'm really grateful that I get to help people like that because of people like you. So let's talk about these steps to successful podcasting. You want to write these down. Number 1, you need a concept and a name. So you saw like divorce experts or the outdoor boardroom, or mine is direct response marketing. We have podcasts on every topic you could possibly imagine. Just go look in the iTunes, in the podcast app, and you will find some podcasts. I mean, there's Elvis Presley impersonator podcasts. So if that's a target market, there's no excuse for you. You're a reporter. You're doing an interview, so you need interview questions that allow your guests to show off their story so that they are most excited to share your interview, your podcast, and your book. And we've got a psychologically proven scripted format that those interview questions should follow. And then you need to book your first guest. And you want to think strategically about this. So you have 2 choices. You can interview your ideal client on the show. We have a client who's an Inc. 500 coach, and he's interviewing Inc. 500 CEOs on his podcast. So those are the people he wants as clients. Gary's interviewing the CEOs who golf. Those are his ideal clients. Or you can interview the center of influence that can get you to your client and give you more leverage. So that would be a financial advisor interviewing an estate planning attorney or a divorce attorney, because then that divorce attorney doesn't get him 1 client, it gets him hundreds. Every person he sees who's getting a divorce, he can hand a copy of the book to and say, hey, here's a little bit more about me. This is a book I was written about in, and that drives them back to my financial advisor. I'm going to give you some quick tricks on how to get your podcast to rank higher in iTunes once you've got it. For example, I went into iTunes and I searched personal branding, and the top podcast for personal branding right now is called Life is a Marathon. But if I look at it, what's its real title? Life is a Marathon, Life Coaching, Self-Esteem, Personal Development, Personal Branding, Positive Thinking. And who's it by? Is it by Bruce Van Horn, or is it by Bruce Van Horn, life coach, motivational speaker, thought leader, author, blogger, runner? Why would he put all of those extra words in? Because they're keywords. It's what he wants to rank for in iTunes. So those are also in the description. Those are also in those are also in show notes. So his keywords are showing up 1, 2, 3, 4 times every episode, 4 places, which helps him rank at the top of iTunes. So little trick for you there. iTunes gives you all of this character space. Use it. You need, I said on a podcast was like a radio show on your phone, and radio shows have introductions, right? Rush Limbaugh doesn't introduce himself. There's a professional voiceover artist with music, a produced introduction. So your introduction should be a lead generation ad for the show. Should tell them why they should listen, right? Should tell them why they should listen to you, why you're the expert in the niche, and for what you want them to do after. So even if they don't listen to the whole show, where do you want them to go? Do you want them to go to your website and get a free report, free video, get a copy of your book, go to Amazon, come to a seminar, pick up the phone? What do you want them to do? Because you can't assume that they will figure it out on their own. People ask, the number 1 question I get all the time, and you can type your questions in the chat box as we go, by the way. Number 1 question we get is the technology. How do I record my podcast? Do I need a microphone and fancy audio equipment and all this stuff? You do not. That's the beauty of it. The technology hurdle has come down so much. all you literally need is an iPhone and a free app called Call Recorder that I will show you how to do right now, and that'll record the interview for you. If you don't want to use Call Recorder, you could use a regular phone and just buy a $20 voice recorder at Office Depot or Staples. The audio quality will be a little lower, but it'll still work. You could also use Skype or freeconferencecall.com, whatever you want to do. This is the App Store. If you type Call Recorder, that's the Call Recorder app. This is what it looks like. The app is free, but you have to pay for airtime. You have to pay for minutes. So you buy credits, and then you hit the big record button, and it turns on, and you hit the contact button, and then you pick the person you're calling, and then you hit merge call when you get them on the phone, and it's recording, and that's it. And when you're done, you just hang up, and then the app will pop open, and it will say, you have a new recording available. What would you like to do? And you say, email it to Seth and his team, and they'll take care of the rest. Since you've got a podcast, you need cover art. Cover art also affects how you rank in iTunes. So you want nice, clean, professional cover art. This is one of the podcasts we produce, the LinkedIn for Business podcast, which is the #1 podcast for LinkedIn by Ted Prodromo. So you notice I've got a title. I've got a microphone showing it's an audio podcast. I've got a picture of Ted. I've got a cool background. I've got a link to his website. And I got info on who he is. That's good, clean cover art. This is, for example, over here, if you type in trading system, this is the Expert Trading Systems podcast. This is Ted's podcast, but he was #3 for LinkedIn. He's now #1. This is the Denture Success podcast. Again, I got a picture of Dr. Rick. It says who he is. It's got a mic, so they know it's an audio podcast, not a video podcast. The title of the podcast, and then teeth, because he's a dentist. Something funny that I had happen was, I don't know how many of you know who Dr. Ivan Meisner is, the founder of BNI, world's largest referral networking organization. But I was interviewed on Ivan's show, and Ivan was interviewed on my show. Ivan has done over 480 episodes of the BNI podcast. But if you type in Ivan Meisner into iTunes, my podcast, where he was interviewed one time, shows up higher than the 480 that have his name on it. It was funny. I texted Ivan and I said, who's doing the marketing for your podcast? Because mine ranks higher than you do for your own name. So somebody in your department needs some help. But I was very honored to be featured on the BNI podcast. You type in real estate agent, Gary Wilson comes up. Another one of our clients. Again, good, clean cover art. His media credibility is over here. Audio podcast mic. Picture of him, what he does, his website. You get the idea. So you need a professionally produced introduction. You need cover art. And you need a place to host your podcast. iTunes itself does not charge you anything to have a podcast, but you have to have a hosting account to get it there. We use something called libsyn.com. I don't get paid to tell you that. I'm not an affiliate of them. We've used other services. There's tons of them out there. We just happen to like Libsyn the best. And then you tell iTunes that Libsyn has instructions that are easy to follow on how you tell iTunes you have a podcast on Libsyn. And then every time you upload an episode to Libsyn, it automatically shows up on iTunes. So you wash, rinse, repeat. And then how you're going to turn it into a book is you transcribe the episode, the interview, edit it. And when you've got enough chapters, there's your book. I mean, you need some other chapters. You need a introduction, some chapters about you, your story, how fabulous you are, what you do, what your offer is, and a conclusion. And then the rest of the book is the interviews. Our secret sauce is our multi-step, multimedia marketing campaign that gets impossible to reach decision makers to participate. Because depending on who you're going after, you can't necessarily just pick up the phone, call a Fortune 500. You can't necessarily call them and say, hey, want to be on my show? Because that's a cold call. Again, you're interrupting them. Granted, you're interrupting them for a better reason, but you're still interrupting them. So even busy divorce lawyers have 2 or 3 secretaries who are going to screen your call. We also have a direct mail campaign that goes to them after the show and the show has aired to get them to share it. We also have a campaign that goes to them to get them to buy copies of the book when it comes out, to give to their clients. And we also have a campaign that goes in their voice to their clients with the book saying, hey, here's why I sent you a copy of this book I was written about in, that drives their clients back to you, whoever those people are. If you hired Dan Kennedy to write all of those campaigns for you, he would charge you $100,000 plus royalties in perpetuity. We had another financial advisor come to us who had paid $3,000 for a seminar campaign, a direct mail piece for a seminar, and it didn't work. They were happy to pay us $6,000 to fix it, and we tripled the response rate. So it's not that it didn't work and it got nobody. It didn't get as many people as they wanted. And we rewrote it and tripled their response rate, and they were thrilled with that. But you're not going to pay any of that for these campaigns because I'm just going to give them to you. How does that sound? I'm hoping you're going to be our next success story. I'm hoping I'm inspiring you because if all this does for you is get you in front of your dream referral sources and prospects, is it worth it? If all it does is get your book done without you having to write anything, is it worth it? And if all it does is get you new customers, clients, and patients, is it worth it? I'm biased, but I have to believe the answer is yes. So how does podcast marketing magic work? We create your podcast. If we do it for you, we create your podcast for you. We create the professional introduction for you. We find the guests for you. We do the marketing campaign to get them to be on your show. We write the interview questions for you. We edit the audio and we upload it all to iTunes for you. We will also transcribe and edit every episode. We will do the graphic design, layout, and publishing of our book in-house. We will then market and promote the book for you. We will provide marketing materials to send out to the folks in the book, and then for them to send out to their clients and patients, all driving a ton of business your way, all done for you. Now, we normally charge $9.97 a month just for the podcast, and we charge $19.97 per month to do the podcast and the book. And it takes about 4 months to do enough interviews before you've got a book done. But we are doing, as part of a marketing test, we are doing a 50% off promotion for this particular training session. So it is $4.97 a month for just the podcast and $9.97 a month for 4 months for the podcast and the book. And in 12 months, you'll have a ton of new business. And here's why. Because you could just quit after the 4 months and the book is done and out. You could quit and we could part ways and part as friends. But if you continue, not only will we keep producing the podcast and produce more books for you, but we'll also do a book launch party where everybody who's in the book, if you're in a local market, will all come to a book launch party. They'll bring their spouses, they'll bring clients, there'll be like a ceremony. We'll do PR and see if we can get local press to come. And it's a great, great event. Plus, then we also facilitate a book mastermind group where everyone who's in the book gets together every single month, talks, and passes business back and forth. So another way to generate referrals out of it. We also throw in a month free of virtual assistant services from our sister company, 123 Employee, so that you can have a virtual assistant do some awesome work for you, like social media or market research or whatever it is that you need done. And I also teach a virtual marketing mastermind group. I teach in person 2 to 3 hours every month of our cutting edge marketing strategies, not just this, but everything we do for our clients that works. It's 2 to 3 hours and we video it, and we normally charge $2,364 for it. But again, as part of this promotion, I'll give you a year's access to it for free without any additional cost. You can get all of these details at podcastmarketingmagic.com/done for you. However, I am not a visual artist. And I realize this isn't the first training session, seminar, webinar, teleseminar that you've ever attended, right? We've been to tons of them. And here's you on the left. I'm not a visual artist. Here's the pot of gold you're trying to get to on the right, wherever you want your business to go. But you can't jump that far. So what do you need? You need a bridge, right? But how many of you, like if you're going to do this on your own, you're going to get started, kid gets sick, phone rings, client comes in, you have an unexpected issue come up, compliance calls, whatever it is, and it falls by the wayside. Something gets in the way, and you end up with a half-built bridge that goes nowhere. Heck, some of you may have done that a few times, and you may have a whole bunch of half-built bridges. I don't want that to happen. I think the podcast marketing system is the bridge that's going to get you from where you are to where you want to go. But it's not the only bridge. There are actually 73 bridges in our double your sales checklist of things you should probably be doing in your business, depending on your business. So what I'll do is, if you want, we'll go through our 73-point checklist with you, find out what you're doing, what you're missing, what your opportunity score is, and what you should be doing in the order you should be doing it. Whether that's with us, that's great. If it's not, and you do it on your own, at least we'll have educated you as to what you should be doing. So if you want that, there's no charge. It's ultimatemarketingmagician.com/strategy-session. Or if you already know that this is for you, you can just sign up at podcastmarketingmagic.done for you. And I'm going to put both of those links in the chat box and open it up for Q&A. Type your questions in the chat box. And I will happily answer them for you. All right, first question coming in. Why do you say it takes 4 months? On average, that's how long it takes. Some people get it done faster than that. Some people take longer than that, but it's a 4-month contract because it takes us time. We have to do the research, send out the marketing campaign. You've got to do the interviews. We want to make sure you have enough interviews done to make a full bookstore length book. So this isn't an ebook. We publish to Amazon, so it'll be physically available for Amazon where you can buy it and it gets shipped to their house or wherever. It will also be on Kindle, so there will be an ebook version, but then we also print copies in-house at cost, and you pay our cost. So depending on the book and how many you buy, it might be $3 a book, it might be $4 a book. We aren't trying to make any money on the books themselves. So you can buy as many copies as you want at our price. Your book subjects, the people in the book, can also buy. I mean, you could charge more if you want to make money, but I would charge as little as possible so that they buy as many as possible and hand out as many as possible, which gets you as much exposure as possible. Richard, is this part of the package we discussed? Yes, it is. It's included in there. Other questions? I am a financial advisor. Oh, we got another financial advisor on the line. Richard, how do you get this through compliance? Easy. We haven't had any compliance issues because compliance can approve the interview questions in advance, and they will approve the transcripts of the interview in advance, and they will approve the final manuscript of the book. So it's static content. It doesn't change. Now, if you're a financial advisor, the only issue you may have is whether or not they'll let you air the interviews as a podcast. If they don't, you still have the book in your file, and financial advisors primarily have been profiting from the book and getting the book out. Some of them are allowed to do podcasts, some are not. But the book has never been an issue. We haven't had anybody not get the book through. We've had people who they said, like Morgan Stanley won't let you do a podcast. But this program still works just fine with just the book. How long is the average book? That depends on how chatty your interview subjects are. But it's a bookstore length book. So, I mean, you're looking like 150 pages, 200 pages. I got one who went up to 220. It just depends. But it's not like 20 pages. It's like a real book. Is this soft cover or hard cover? That's up to you. It will cost you more per copy if you want hardcover. The price I quoted, like $3 or $4 a copy, is on a soft cover book. You're more than welcome to. We don't make a profit on the books, so if you want hardcover, you just pay whatever the cost for that is. But yes, you can have it hardcover if you want. If we stop after 4 months and don't continue, what happens to the? Oh, well, you would. The book is yours. It's all your intellectual property. The podcast is yours. We would move the podcast to your Libsyn account as opposed to our master account if you weren't doing business with us anymore. And you could keep doing it on your own. You own the introduction, the cover art. You would own everything. Who does all the other parts of the book? The other things you mentioned? We do. So like the chapters about you, we interview you and we write those chapters. So there'd be an interview chapter of you and then additional stuff about what you do and your offer and things like that. We help you do all of that. What happens if we continue after 4 months? We do the book launch party and the book mastermind group. Do we keep doing the podcast? Yes. So there, for example, let's say there were 12 divorce attorneys in the first edition of your book. There's probably more than 12 in your town that you would like to get to know. So after the first book comes out, you could do Divorce New Jersey, second edition, third edition. and put more people in it and do another book. And you'd have listeners, you'd have a following on your fan base for your podcast. So you wouldn't necessarily want it to just drop off. You wouldn't want to disappear. I am happy to make you a star, Richard. Glad you're ready to rock. That is our goal. To first, we want to make you famous to the right people, and then we want to get you business. And then you're a published author, and you have that street cred. I mean, your book will be in the Library of Congress, has an ISBN number, like it's a real book. The only thing I can't do, it depends. Like if you're in a small local market, I'm not going to get you into Barnes and Noble. Like it's just not going to happen because you got to have enough reach. But for example, our Inc. 500 coach, I'm guessing that we will, once his book is done, we'll be able to get him like a bookstore distribution deal because it's a national broad market. My book, Podcast Marketing Magic, will be in bookstores. It's a national broad market and a very popular topic. Anybody else? Okay. Awesome. I hope I am inspiring you. Again, if you want to talk about which bridge, if this is the right strategy for you, if you should be doing something else first, go to the strategy session URL. If you are ready to get started, go to podcastmarketingmagic.com/done for you. Richard, one more. Let me restate. I don't really care about fame, more about a rock star in my business with awesome clients. I understood that. Got it. I wasn't trying to get you mobbed by teenage girls, Richard. We just want to get you more clients. I understood. I got you. I got you covered. Appreciate the feedback. All right. Thanks everybody for attending. Again, we look forward to hearing from you. If you do this on your own, let me know how it goes. If you want to talk to us, you know how to get in touch with us, and we look forward to working with you. Have an awesome day.